In this episode, I'll be reading Path of Exile 2 0.5's Return of the Ancients patch notes aloud from start to finish so that you can listen along whilst you work, commute, grind, or even theorycraft. I'm CtrlAltNatz, and if you like this kind of content, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments so that I can make more. This is a straight reading of the patch notes with no added analysis or commentary, just an easier way to consume all the changes without sitting down to read through the entire post yourself. I will read at a slower pace, so feel free to speed this up should you need to. Content update 0.5.0 Path of Exile 2 Return of the Ancients. The Return of the Ancients expansion contains a new league, an overhaul to Path of Exile 2's endgame, with 6 new endgame storylines and 2 new ascendancy classes, as well as a huge amount of other content. For more information about this expansion, check out pathofexile2.com/ancients. The Runes of Aldor League. Start fresh in a new economy with the Runes of Aldor League. In each area in the Runes of Aldor League, you will find a remnant which allows you to craft an item of your choosing by using runic recipes engraved into the slots on the remnant. Depending on the rune shapes used, you will then face an encounter with tough enemies that you will need to defeat to claim your item. Each additional rune shape used to craft the item will increase the number of waves of enemies, adding additional runic modifiers to the enemies with each wave. Remnants start with any number of slots between 2 and 10, with higher numbers being much rarer, but allowing you to craft much rarer items. Monsters raised by remnants can drop verbatim metal, a new currency. Added new NPC Pharaoh with 4 new quests in the campaign, allowing you to unlock various new crafting features. New crafting system, verbatim runeforging. After unlocking verbatim runeforging in Act 1, this system allows you to add runic ward to your armors by spending verbatim. Armors lower than level 55 gain runic ward with no downside. Armors above this level trade some of their regular base defenses for runic ward. Added new defense runic ward. This defense kicks in once you reach level 1 life, allowing you to continue to survive while your runic ward takes damage. Runic ward regenerates independently of your life. Added 13 new alloy currency items which can be unlocked through remnant encounters after completing Pharaoh's quest in Act 2. These items add various new crafted modifiers to items by replacing an existing modifier, similar to perfect essences. After unlocking unique verbatim runeforging in Act 3, you can upgrade the base type of unique weapons and armors that drop at levels lower than 55. Upgraded unique weapons will have higher damage, and upgraded armors will have increased base defenses as well as runic ward, allowing them to be more competitive at higher levels. Unique armors above level 55 can still be runeforged to modify their defenses to include runic ward at the cost of reducing their other defenses, similar to the base types. Unique verbatim runeforging has additional properties when used on Kalguran uniques. Added 13 ancient runes which can be unlocked to be crafted by remnant encounters after completing Pharaoh's quest in Act 4. These runes have powerful bonuses specific to each weapon type. Added 13 mythical early game runes that can be crafted from remnant encounters to provide significant boosts to level 15 plus characters. Added 13 fluxes which can be crafted from remnants to transform the resistances on your items from one element to another. Added 15 meta crafting runes that can be crafted from remnants. Added 60 plus runes that can be created by destroying a unique to make a rune that gains some of its properties. Added 15 plus runic ward runes that can be crafted from remnants, adding or modifying properties related to runic ward. Added 21 Kalgoran skills that can be crafted from remnants, Animus Exchange, Animus Splinters, Bitter Dead, Conductive Runes, Detonate Living, Eternal March, Explosive Transmutation, Fragments of the Past, Frostflame Nova, Grim Pillars, Hollow Shell, Ley Lines, Powered by Verbatim, Refutation, Remnants of Kalgor, Repulsion, Runic Reprieve, Skyfall, Triskelion Cascade, Verbatim Manifestations, and Voltaic Barrier. Added 8 Kalgoran supports that can be crafted from remnants, Concussive Runes, Fist of Kalgor, Healing Runes, Kalgoran Conviction, Rune-forged Blades, Runic Extraction, Runic Infusion, and Scouring Flame. Expedition remnants have been changed into the remnants from the Runes of Aldor League. New endgame story. Set out on an expedition with Pharaoh to explore the ocean as you investigate the tombs of fallen Kalgorans and challenge them to earn remarkable rewards. Seek out the crater of a fallen star, a meteor of pure verbatim, from which you hope to forge objects of immense power, if you can defeat what awaits you there. There is now a hub area, the Runes of King's March, for the Runes of Aldor to the southeast of your starting location on the Atlas. The logbook mechanic has been changed into an ocean exploring mechanic. Using logbooks now unveils a section of the ocean with a variety of islands to explore. Many new underground areas have been added that can be uncovered during expeditions. Many new islands have been added with new grand expeditions previously known as logbooks. Medved, Varana, and Uthred join Olroth as the 4 faction leaders available to fight on new islands that you can discover in the ocean. Defeating Olroth will give you a key that you can use to access the new pinnacle boss for the Runes of Aldor. The new Runes of Aldor Challenge League includes the first set of challenges in Path of Exile 2. Earn pieces of the Knight of Aldor armor set when you complete 2, 4, 6, and 8 challenges in the Runes of Aldor. These challenge rewards are only obtainable in this league. From the first challenge onwards, and for every challenge after that, you will receive pieces of the Runes of Aldor totem decoration to display in your hideout. The totem pole permanently showcases how many of the Runes of Aldor challenges you completed during the league. All of your old characters from the early access launch are still present, but a free passive tree refund has been granted due to the changes. We would highly encourage you to join the new leagues to fully take in the changes we've made with the 0.5.0 update. With 0.5.0, there are standard, hardcore, and solo self-found variations of the Runes of Aldor Challenge League available. They have the same core mechanic and items, and you can create private league versions of these leagues. The hardcore variations of Runes of Aldor are parented to their standard Runes of Aldor equivalent, meaning if you die in hardcore Runes of Aldor, you can continue on in the standard Runes of Aldor League. Endgame. The Atlas now has fixed points of interest at specific locations, giving you distinct objectives that are easy to find. All League mechanics on the Atlas now have quests that introduce the mechanic and guide you through its various stages up to the pinnacle boss. All pinnacle bosses now have quest variations that can be accessed deterministically alongside repeatable non-quest versions that offer a greater challenge. Added 30 new endgame map areas. Origins of Divinity, the endgame overhaul. New endgame storyline. The cataclysm of the beast has invoked an ancient protocol designed to scour for and purge corruption should it ever take hold to this degree. Traverse the Atlas to enter the fortress and activate the gates. Obtain the keys to reach the ancient precursor weapons and disarm them. On completion of your first tower, a fortress will rise from the earth. Maps inside the fortress grant one or more passive points for the Atlas passive tree. This entirely replaces the previous method of gaining Atlas points. The Atlas tree has been significantly expanded with over 300 nodes. After completing all the maps inside the fortress, you will gain enough passive points to fully allocate the Atlas tree. As the entire Atlas tree can be fully allocated, there is no need to allow re-specialization for it anymore. Multi-choice nodes on the tree can be changed between options at any time. Many maps in the fortress have ancient modifiers that add or modify the content of the map. Any maps with modifiers that add secondary content to a map also implicitly add that content to the map as well. Added 40 plus ancient modifiers that have a chance to appear on any map outside the fortress. Added 3 gateway maps with 2 new bosses that can be used to access different sections of the fortress. New precursor tower maps have been added outside the fortress. The Burning Monolith, along with Arbiter of Ash, has been moved into the fortress. Quest versions of the Crisis Fragments have been added to 2 Enigma chambers inside the fortress. Added 2 new Citadel maps with 2 new bosses that drop keys to the new Pinnacle boss. Added Arbiter of Divinity Pinnacle boss. Maps in the fortress can be alternatively completed by killing the Arbiter of Divinity 5 times to complete different sections of the fortress automatically in order to gain Atlas Tree points. Masters of the Atlas. Alongside the Atlas Tree, a new system called Masters of the Atlas introduces Ascendancy style progression for the endgame. Alongside the Atlas Tree, a new system called Masters of the Atlas introduces Ascendancy style progression for the endgame. Players can align with different masters such as Jado of the Order of the Jinn or the Monster Hunter Hilda, each offering unique asymmetric bonuses that can be swapped between maps at will, enabling build-defining bonuses. Each master has 12 nodes, of which 4 can be selected at the same time. You can change your selection at any time. All 3 masters can be allocated at the same time with quick select button to change between each master before you run a map. Unlock each row of 3 nodes by performing missions for the masters. New Atlas Master. Doriani's Science questline is unlocked by clearing a corruption nexus. New Atlas Master. Hilda's Hunting questline is unlocked by visiting Hilda's campsite slightly southwest of your starting location on the Atlas. New Atlas Master Jado's Spycraft questline is unlocked by completing an anomaly map near the starting location. Delirium. New storyline. An ancient trickster god has been unleashed, spreading madness across Rayclast. Do you dare to uncover his origins and confront your darkest fears? See pathofexile2.com Ancients #Delirium for more details. There is now a hub area, the Withered Willow, for Delirium to the southwest of your starting location on the Atlas. The maps around this location all contain Deliriums and give you points for the Delirium Atlas passive tree. The Delirium Atlas passive tree has been completely revamped with many new nodes and existing nodes changed. After breaking a Delirium mirror, there is now a progress bar showing how deep you are in the fog and how long you have until the fog clears. The start of the Delirium bar represents your initial location at the Delirium mirror. The end of the Delirium bar represents the location of the map boss. There are now a set of new delirium encounters that can be seen on the delirium bar. Reaching certain depths will cause coloured mirror shards to appear. Walking into the mirror shards will break them, activating the new encounters. The direction of the map boss can be observed by looking at the fog effect. Moving in the direction of the fog will always lead you to the map boss. Map bosses in Delirium will always be 100% delirious. The damage and life bonus given to monsters from Delirium has been reduced. Added 5 new elite Delirium monsters. Added a new sub-area, Loathsome Mire. The Loathsome Mire drops 2 new amulet base types that grant 2 instilled notables at the cost of either 1 suffix or 1 prefix. Liquid emotions can now be used to craft additional mods on jewels. These work similarly to greater essences, each having a set of specific mods that will replace a random existing mod on the item. Completing Delirium Mirrors now has a chance to spawn Grand Mirrors on the Atlas on a nearby map. Grand Mirrors create a duplicate of the map boss in the affected map. Killing both map bosses will unlock a new Atlas mechanic, the Trial of Madness. After triggering the Trial of Madness, fog will spread from a map of your choosing on the Atlas, including a locked simulacrum. While inside the fog, the entire map is delirious, starting at 10%. Killing rare monsters and the map boss increases the deliriousness of all maps in the fog. On reaching 100%, the simulacrum will become available. Deliriousness can continue to be increased up to 200% delirious. Rare and unique monsters in delirious maps have a set of new delirious modifiers giving them strange new abilities. Map bosses of delirious maps can now additionally drop a new set of 3 potent emotions that can be used to craft new powerful modifiers on jewels that are not available in the normal jewel mod pool. These emotions can also be used to instill a set of 16 new passive tree notables that are not normally available on the passive tree. Simulacrum has been updated and is now a 7-wave encounter. Completing a simulacrum will now give you a key to face the new Delirium Pinnacle boss. There is a new set of 10 ancient emotions that can drop if unlocked by the Atlas tree, which can be used to craft time-lost jewels. There are also 3 ancient potent emotions that can be used to craft new powerful modifiers on time-lost jewels that are not normally available in the mod pool. Some non-amulet Delirium uniques now drop with the Raven-touched modifier, allowing them to be instilled. Breach. New Breach storyline. Travel to the Monastery of the Keepers, the hollowed halls of the Keepers of the Flame, and discover the Genesis tree stolen from the enemy and gifted to the Keepers by the Dreamer himself. For more information, see pathofexile2.com, Ancients #Breach. There is a new hub area, the Monastery of the Keepers, to the south of your starting location on the Atlas. The maps around this location all contain Breach encounters. Completing these maps gives you points for the Breach Atlas tree. The Breach Atlas passive tree has been completely revamped, with many new nodes and existing nodes changed. Starting a breach now shows a progress bar that indicates how long you have until the breach will close, as well as how much time killing monsters is extending the life of the breach. Reaching 100% on this bar will begin a new mechanic, a stabilized breach. A stabilized breach will spawn new challenges at its starting point. Added a new boss to stabilized breach, Vrun, Marshal of Zesht. Added a new crafting system, the Genesis tree. The Genesis tree allows consuming of womb gifts and hive blood to create rings, amulets, belts, and currency. Nodes on the Genesis tree can be allocated to affect what items will be crafted. New nodes are unlocked by using womb gifts. Added 6 new ring base types that can be exclusively crafted from the Genesis tree. Added 4 new amulet base types that can be exclusively crafted from the Genesis tree. Added 4 new belt base types that can be exclusively crafted from the Genesis tree. Added a new set of caster and minion mods that can be crafted onto rings and belts using the Genesis tree. Catalysts can no longer drop from monsters. These are now solely obtained from the Genesis tree. Added a new set of 12 catalysts that can add new quality modifiers to duels. Killing monsters in a breach now drops Hive Blood and Womb Gifts and Breachstone Splinters. Breachstone Splinters turn into a special Womb Gift when fully stacked. This can be turned in at the Genesis tree to create a Breachstone. New Breach Domains now spawn on the Atlas. Using a Breachstone will reveal the maps inside the domain, allowing you to enter them. Maps inside the Breach domain contain new encounters, Breach Hives, Sky Hives, and Sky Fortresses. Breach Hives have a series of walls that can be burned by walking through them. Each wall destroyed will increase the number of monsters in the encounter, which can be started in the center. Sky Hives are a new area in which the Breach Lords have constructed fortresses that you will need to assail. Sky Hives contain a challenging multi-wave encounter in which you will need to defend Aelith while she closes the domain. Aelith will gain a series of abilities that can be triggered during the encounter with various effects. Fortresses are a new area with a new pair of bosses, Tull and Esh. Defeating Tull and Esh will give you a key to access the existing Breach Pinnacle boss. Ritual. New storyline. Aoife lingers as a restless spirit, bound to the Wildwood and searching for the one who might answer her call. The King of the Mists has claimed her flesh, leaving her soul adrift, untethered and unable to pass beyond. She believes that only by reclaiming what was taken can she be made whole once more. Find out more at pathofexile2.com/ancients #ritual. There is a new hub area, Caer Tarth, to the west of your starting location on the Atlas. The maps around this location all contain ritual encounters. Completing these maps gives you points for the Ritual Atlas tree. The Ritual Atlas passive tree has been completely revamped, with many new nodes and existing nodes changed. After completing a Ritual Altar encounter in a map, Locus will point the way to the next altar. All items in the endgame ritual rewards screen are now either uniques or omens. Any tribute not spent on rewards can now be sacrificed to gain an audience with the king. Killing the King in the Mists now drops a new key, the Head of the King. This key can be used in Caer Tarth to begin the Rite of the Nameless. The Rite of the Nameless is a new Atlas mechanic in which you can choose a series of 5 maps to complete a single continuous ritual. The monsters from each ritual, including the map boss, will reappear in each map in the sequence, making for a very challenging encounter. The unique bosses from each map will only appear in the final ritual of each map. While choosing maps for the Rite of the Nameless, each map after the first will contain extra modifiers which affect the difficulty and rewards of the rituals during the rite. Each map in the Rite of the Nameless awards one element of the key used to access the Ritual Pinnacle boss. Added new boss, the Queen in the Mists, available after allocating a specific node on the Atlas tree. This boss can drop 3 new corrupted idols. Fraythorn rituals are now prevented from ever showing deferred items, to ensure items are not lost if returning to this area on a higher level character. Fate of the Vaal moving to core. Fate of the Vaal has been added to the core game. You first encounter a series of 6 ancient beacons in Act 3, energize them to obtain energized crystals and open a portal to the Vaal ruins. You'll encounter a second set of 6 ancient beacons in the interludes. There is now an Atlas passive tree for the Fate of the Vaal League mechanic. Adziri's temple can now be found on the Atlas to the northeast of your starting location in the city of Lyra Vaal. Maps inside the city of Lyra Vaal always have energized crystals and grant points for the Fate of the Vaal Atlas passive tree. There are also new temple precursor tablets that will guarantee Vaal beacons in your map if you want to focus on this league. It is no longer possible to prevent a room being deleted from the temple. Rooms that must be deleted but have other connections will be turned into simple path rooms. This prevents the snake strategy. The number of runes in the temple when first starting has increased to allow getting to Adziri more quickly. Rooms can now be upgraded to Tier 4 after unlocking this ability on the Temple Atlas tree. This allows more specialization into particular room types and encourages more interesting temple layouts. Reward rooms granted from the console after defeating the Architect have been significantly improved, with more varieties to unlock in addition to upgrading the rewards of all the existing ones. Restricted rooms in Adziri's temple that are accessible will always destabilize upon exiting the temple. Adziri's temple medallions now have their drop rates scaled with the number of paths in the temple, in addition to other rooms, previously only other rooms. Room-based medallions can no longer be used inside of an active temple. Room-based medallions now display upgrade information when hovered. Medallions now output descriptive error messages when they cannot be placed. The default maximum number of energized crystals you can store has been increased to 60, and the maximum number of medallions has been increased to 6. The medallions that increase the number of stored energized crystals or medallions are no longer necessary. The monster level of the temple now factors in the level of the areas where the crystal used to open it were obtained. The Corruption Chamber temple bonuses have been updated to add monster modifiers chance instead of additional monster modifiers. Portals created in the Temple of Adziri now create a corresponding portal in the parent Vaal ruins for ease of access. Vaal beacons now show a grayed out icon on the minimap when completed. There are now 4 types of infusers. Existing Vaal infusers are now Vaal Armorer's infusers, which can be applied to armor. Vaal Blacksmith's infusers can be applied to martial weapons, while Vaal Arcanist infusers can be applied to wands, staves, and scepters. Vaal Catalyzing infusers can be applied to jewelry. All infusers can only be used on items at or above 20% quality. Fate of the Vaal currency items now have a maximum stack size of 5,000 when stored in the wildcard slots in the currency stash tab. Some of the possible outcomes from applying to Vaal cultivation orbs to unique items have been updated. The Adziri's Rule unique staff can now roll 10 to 20% increased life cost efficiency, previously 20 to 40%. The Adziri's Splendor unique body armor can now roll plus 66 to 100 to maximum energy shield, previously plus 100 to 200. The Covenant unique body armor can now roll 10 to 25% increased life cost efficiency, previously 25 to 50%. The Hateforge unique gloves can now roll plus 16 to 30 maximum rage if you've used a skill that requires glory in the past 20 seconds. Previously, plus 8 to 12 maximum rage per skill that requires glory in the past 6 seconds up to 5 times. The Rathpith Globe unique focus can now roll 8 to 15% increased life cost efficiency, previously 12 to 20%. The shackles of wretched unique gloves can no longer roll elemental ailments other than freeze you inflict at reflected to you, instead now being able to roll 10 to 15% increased damage per curse on you. The Vertex unique helmet can no longer roll 2 to 4 to level of all skill gems, instead now being able to roll +3 to 5 to level all curse skill gems. Abyss. There are now large abyss cracks on the Atlas. Completing Atlas abysses will close them and always give you an abyssal depth with a boss fight. The Abyss Atlas tree has been revamped with many new nodes and changes to existing nodes. Kulamak's invitation is now always allocated to the map owner. Abyss omens no longer drop in areas below 65. Modifiers to the number of chests found now apply to chests found in Abyss. These also apply to the chance to find an abyssal depths, so the chance to find an abyssal depths does not decrease with more chests in the area. Adjusted the damage of the Meteoric Demise Abyss monster modifier. Lithomantic runes from Lithomantic Runes Abyss monster modifier are now active after a longer delay. Expedition. Expedition League has been temporarily disabled on standard leagues due to the integration with the Runes of Aldor. This will be reintegrated into standard after the Runes of Aldor is over. The Recombinator has been disabled. The Omen of Recombination has been removed. Existing omens of recombination will be deleted upon logging in. The Forgotten by Time Expedition Precursor Tablet has been temporarily disabled from dropping. Expedition explosives now wait to explode until the most of the monsters unearthed by the previous explosive has been killed. Expedition explosives now wait to explode until most of the monsters unearthed by the previous explosive have been killed. You can now use currency from your stash to purchase items from expedition vendors. Other endgame changes. With the introduction of the new endgame storyline, the Atlas has been reset. Your existing tablets and waystones will continue to work so you can continue your progression as normal, but in order to gain points for the Atlas tree, you will need to do the Origins of Divinity storyline. Added support for searching to the endgame Atlas map. You can now zoom out slightly further on the Atlas screen. There are now 2 versions of each pinnacle boss, the Quest version and the Infinite Farm version. As such, primary, secondary and tertiary calamity fragments can no longer be obtained. Tablets of the same type may now be used together to increase the amount of the League content that is spawned. The specifics of this are different for each content type. In some cases, adding multiple tablets will increase the size of a single encounter, while in other cases it will increase the number of encounters spawned. Each empty tablet slot now contributes to the amount of random non-tablet spawned League content in the area. This means that if all tablet slots are full, you will only see the League content from the tablets you are using. The intent of this change is to make sure that you do not need to complete the Atlas tree for leagues you do not intend to run. Waystones must now be identified in order to activate them in the map device. You can now use Orbs of Chance on tablets. Some items and content now require you to specialize in them through Atlas passive skills, including exceptional items, fracturing orbs, basic and overseer precursor tablets. Tablets can no longer be used on maps that cannot have extra content, such as unique maps. League-specific tablets no longer drop from non-map areas, such as Simulacrum, Abyssal Depths, or Twisted Domain. Lowered the base chances for essences, Asmiri spirits, shrines, strongboxes, summoning circles, and rogue exiles appearing in maps, somewhat due to the much larger increase now available on the Atlas tree. Atlas passives that reference maps with powerful map bosses now work with Overseer precursor tablets and other sources of powerful map bosses. Adjusted the values of general precursor tablet modifiers to be similar to the same type bonuses granted by Waystone modifiers. Also reduced the role variance of these modifiers. The following modifiers can no longer roll on Waystones: Barons, Beastly, Brambled, Dorianes, Enervating, Pyridon, Hallowed, of Nemesis, Perennials, Rusted, and Sacrificial. Whether a map modifier is a suffix or a prefix has been adjusted so that generally prefixes are modifiers that affect a monster output towards the player, and suffixes are modifiers that affect the player or monster defenses. The following suffix modifiers are now prefixes: Order of Destruction, of Fleeting, of Impact, of Penetration, of Puncturing, of Shattering, of Splitting, and of Venom. The following prefix modifiers are now suffixes: Buffering, Enduring, Enfeebling, Eroding, Evasive, Flaming, Hexwarded, Shocking, Sleet, and Slowing. The of Overpowering Waystone modifier no longer causes monsters to have increased freeze build-up, shock chance, or inflict increased flammability magnitude. It now causes monsters to have increased elemental ailment application. Waystone modifier bonuses have been updated. They now provide more monster effectiveness, pack size, item rarity, monster rarity, or Waystone drop chance, depending on the modifier. These modifiers are multiplicative with other sources, such as those found on the Atlas passive tree. Modifiers to pack size now also provide a chance for additional rare monster to appear in rare monster packs. Monster rarity is a new stat available that affects the chances of magic and rare monsters, and the chance for additional modifiers on rare monsters. Map modifiers that included sources of increased number of rare monsters or increased number of magic monsters have been updated to only display the number at the header of the map and not also be displayed amongst the explicit modifiers. That is not a functional change. Halved the bonus to quantity of item dropped and experience gain provided by increased monster effectiveness, such as from Aziri's Temple. The functionality of the Omen of Chaotic Rarity, Omen of Chaotic Quantity, and Omen of Chaotic Monsters have been inverted. Instead of guaranteeing the new modifiers are of their type, they instead prevent the modifiers from being of their type. Added the new Omen of Chaotic Effectiveness. While this item is active in your inventory, your next Chaos Orb will replace all modifiers on a Waystone with modifiers that do not grant monster effectiveness. Up to 3 of the above omens may be used simultaneously. Halved the damage as extra buffs granted from the following shrines: Freezing Shrine, Gloom Shrine, Meteoric Shrine, and Tempest Shrine. Completion of fixed locations on the Atlas is now shared with party members. With the addition of more varied content on the Atlas map, the size of content indicators has been increased 50%. Waystones have received new 2D art. Campaign replayability. To improve how long it takes for experienced players to replay through the game in each new league, we've added additional elements to multiple campaign areas that tell you where to go, if you know what to look for. You can see some examples in this video found on YouTube. Some areas throughout the game have been shortened. Remove the second Dreadnought area, the Dreadnought Vanguard. The Act 2 boss is now in the Dreadnought. Area order in Act 3 has been somewhat rearranged in order to make the progression smoother. The waterway's levers have been turned into pressure pads that you simply need to walk over, and the final part of the level has the water pre-drained. Monster density in the second half of the campaign has been reduced, especially in the interludes, to allow getting through these areas more quickly. Player changes. Bleed damage on players is no longer increased while the player is moving. This change does not affect bleeds players apply to monsters. Your maximum runic ward is now added to your starting honor when beginning a trial of Sekhmet. The defenses keyword is no longer in use. Existing uses of the word defenses now explicitly refer to armor, evasion, and energy shield, to make it more clear that these modifiers do not apply to runic ward, resistances, block, or other forms of protection. This is purely a description change. Only a single leech instance per resource, life, mana, or energy shield can apply at a time. When multiple leech instances are active, only one with the highest recovery rate will recover you until it expires, after which the next highest recovery rate instance will apply. There is now a limit on the maximum number of damage a hit can be considered to deal for leech. Hits that deal less than 40,000 total damage are unaffected, but if a hit would deal more than 40,000 total damage, it is treated as dealing only 40,000 damage for purposes of leech calculation. The values of each damage type in the hit are scaled down evenly to reach this limit. This means that extremely high damage hits stop improving leech past a certain point, but increasing your leech percentage will always increase the amount of the resource you are gaining. The formula for chance to deflect has been adjusted to provide better scaling with investment into deflection rating, with a cap of 95% chance to deflect, similar to a chance to evade being capped at 95%. The new chance to deflect equals 150 times open bracket 1 minus A divided by open bracket A plus 0.12 times D close bracket, where A equals attacker accuracy rating and D equals defender deflection rating. This makes for a linear path that gets rewarded at higher investments. Parry, shield, block, and resonating shield no longer delay heavy stun build-up from decaying longer than expected. Melee attacks can now only apply splash damage once per damaging area. Some attacks create multiple damaging areas during use. For example, Whirling Assault creates multiple damaging areas around you as you move. When minions are removed due to resources changing, such as weapon swapping, newer minions are now prioritized for removal over older minions to avoid wasting minion cooldown abilities unnecessarily. Minions affected by Last Gasp support or Tekrod's Revenge lineage support and totems affected by the unnamed Heartwood Oracle notable passive skill can no longer die during the effect from taking further damage exceeding their maximum life. Stats worded as when you collect a remnant no longer give you the benefits of these stats when an ally shares the effects of the remnant with you. Updated the name of the buff that Trinity grants to Affinity, as Resonance is the name of a keystone passive skill. This is purely a description update. Arcane buffs are no longer inherently lost when you attack. This is now a property of Elemental Archon specifically. New content and features. Introduce the new Martial Artist Ascendancy class for Monk. After decades of training, the martial artist has become a master of illusions. Empowered by the runes socketed into his body, this class creates powerful illusions, summons illusory bells to aid him, and excels at using his hands as weapons. Introduce the new Spirit Walker Ascendancy class of the Huntress. Bound to the wilds, this class calls upon spirits to answer to her will, granting different abilities aligning with the stag, owl, and bear. Through their guidance, the Spirit Walker may subdue even the most formidable beasts, binding them in spirit, or call forth a spectral companion to fight beside her. New lineage supports Arbiter's Reach, Breachlord's Amalgam, Cather's Brilliance, Ayanir's Thunder, Escher's Prowess, Helbrim's Hide, Her Declaration, Medved's Felling, Morrigan's Insight, Prototype 17, Seraph's Heart, Stern's Ferocity, Stern's Mountain, Tagmazu's Thurible, Trickster's Shard, Tull's Avalanche, Uthred's Constellation, Uthred's Right, Varana's Siege, Vrun's Inevitability, Vrun's Aftermath, Berek's Grip, Berek's Pass, Berek's Respite, Brutus's Lead Sprinkler, Cat o' Nine Tails, Decree of Acuity, Decree of Flight, Decree of Loyalty, Duality, Eventide Petals, Eyes of the Runefather, Basebreaker, Barrow's Gift, Forgotten Warden, Joffrey's Sanctuary, Gatecrasher, Horror's Flight, Ironbound, Liminal Coil, Lawweave, Mageblood, Mastered Domain, Nightfall, Opportunity, Redemption, Periphery, Sadist's Mercy, Cyril's Grit, Spiteful Floret, Split Personality, Surge of the Tide, Sylvan's Effigy, the Auspex, the Hollow Mask, the Ordained, the Raven's Flock, the Sunken Vessel, the Unleashed, Twisted Empyrean, Vestige of Darkness, Veil Piercer, Voices. Added 8 new idols that come exclusively from monsters possessed by Asmerian spirits. Added the new Minion Splash and Minion Splash 2 strength support gems. These support skills which create minions which strike, causing those minion strikes to have melee splash. The Fragment Stash tab is now available for use in Path of Exile 2. It can hold your fragments including Breach, Splinters, Simulacrums, Audience with the King, Inscribed Ultimatums, and Barriers, as well as tablets. If you previously purchased one in Path of Exile, it will automatically be made available to you once the 0.5.0 patch is deployed. For those without a Fragment Stash tab, you will be able to find this in the Stash tabs section of the microtransaction store after 0.5.0 goes live. Added support for build guides. Community creators who write build guides can now create build files for players to download. When selected in the game client, these will show you everything you need to know for that build, including the passive skills to allocate, which ascendancy passive skills to take, skill gems to equip, as well as recommendations for support gems. Added the ability to quickly search the trade market with an item you have. Shift-Alt-click in an item will populate the filters for searching the trade market so you can see the current prices. For rare items, you can enable and disable each modifier to easily determine the effect each one has on an item's price. In party play, you can now quickly revive any fallen party members after defeating the boss. You can now skip dialogue sequences with NPCs by pressing escape. Added a reforging bench to the entrance of the Trial of Sekhmet. Continue to incrementally improve the sound, art, effects, and environments. Ascendancy changes. Acolyte of Chayula. The Into the Breach skill granted by the Waking Dream notable passive skill now grants leech 20% of your maximum life to you when collecting a red flame of Chayula, previously 15%, and leech 20% of your maximum mana to you when collecting a blue flame of Chayula, previously 15%. The wording of the Into the Breach skill has been updated to clarify behavior ranges related to flames of Chayula. Into the Breach now applies modifiers to remnant pickup range to the range at which flames of Chayula can be seen. This is purely a visual change. Blood Mage. The Vitality Siphon notable passive skill now grants 20% of the spell damage leached as life, previously 10%. Chronomancer. The Rapid River notable passive skill has been removed. This position has been taken by Now and Again. The Now and Again notable passive skill has been reworked. It now grants cascadable spells have 20% chance to echo, and repeatable spells have 20% chance to repeat. The Unbound Encore notable passive skill has taken the previous position of Now and Again. The Ultimate Command notable passive skill now requires Unbound Encore. Added the new Phased Form notable passive skill, Preceding Footprints in the Sand. Phased Form grants take 30% less damage, and 4 seconds after being damaged by an enemy hit, take equal to 30% of that hit's damage. Added the new Phased Form notable passive skill, Preceding Footprints in the Sand. Phased Form grants take 30% less damage, and 4 seconds after being damaged by an enemy hit, take damage equal to 30% of that hit's damage. The Temporal Rift skill granted by the Footprints in the Sand notable passive skill have been updated. It now has a cast time of 0.1 seconds, previously 0.5, and now also removes delayed damage from Phase Form. The Inevitable Agony skill granted by the Inevitability notable passive skill has been reworked. It is no longer a curse and has a 2-second cooldown. The debuff is now a life loss effect instead of secondary hit damage, and the debuff amount is now displayed on static health bars. The debuff now instantly culls enemies when total life loss reaches Culling Strike threshold. Now grants debuffed targets lose life equal to 25% of hit damage dealt to them while debuffed, previously 50%. Enemy curse effectiveness no longer applies to this skill, meaning unique enemies have the same effectiveness as previously, while other enemies have less. Debuff duration is now 12 seconds, previously 6 to 8.6 seconds. Quality now grants plus 0 to 0.5 meters to initial cast radius. Previously, Curse Zone erupts after 0 to 10% reduced delay. The skill has also received new visual effects. The Sands of Time buff granted by Quicksand Hourglass notable passive skill now grants 1 to 60% increased skill speed, previously cast speed, and also has new visual effects. Gemling Legionnaire. The Crystalline Potential notable passive skill has been removed. Added a new notable passive skill, Essence of Virtue. This grants the Virtuous Barrier skill, which, while active, conjures a glittering barrier that accumulates protective gemstone motes of each attribute type over time, but loses a random mote when you are hit. The Advanced Thaumaturgy notable passive skill no longer grants the Thaumaturgical Dynamism skill. It instead now grants gem quality, grants socketed skills, an additional effect. All gems in the game now have an additional quality stat that can be seen while holding Alt on the gem after picking this notable. Pathfinder. The Overwhelming Toxicity notable passive skill now grants 50% less poison duration, previously 35%. The running assault notable passive skill now grants 30% less movement speed penalty from using the skills while moving, previously 50%. Witch Hunter. Obsessive Rituals now grants 50% less armor and evasion rating, previously 35% less. Passive Tree Changes. Added 19 new companion-themed passive skills to the passive tree. Added 9 new life recoup speed passive skills to the passive tree. Added a new Archon of Undeath cluster to the Witch/Sorceress area of the passive tree. The Ancestral Bond Keystone passive skill now causes placing totems to have no cost and not require consuming charges to place. It still causes totems to reserve 75% spirit each and now doubles totem limit instead of removing it completely. The Trusted Kinship Keystone passive skill now grants 30% more reservation efficiency of companion skills and 20% less reservation efficiency of non-companion skills. It no longer provides you have 30% less defenses, or companions have +1 to each defense for every 2 that defense you have. The Val Pact Keystone passive skill now grants 50% more amount of life leeched, 67% less life leeched speed, cannot recover life other than from leech, and life leech effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled. It no longer provides life leech is instant or cannot use life flasks. The reformed barrier cluster has been removed. The warding fetish cluster has moved locations and no longer connects to a dual socket. The storm charged and breaking point cluster no longer connects to a dual socket. The adamant recovery notable passive skill has been replaced by fortified Aegis, which grants 100% increased armor, evasion, and energy shield from equipped shield. The Arcane Mixtures notable passive skill now grants 10% increased cast speed if you have used a mana flask recently, instead of 25% increased energy shield recharge rate. The Bastion of the Forest notable passive skill now grants 10% faster start of energy shield recharge, previously 15%. The Casting Cascade notable passive skill now grants 6% increased cast speed for each different spell you've cast in the last 8 seconds, previously 4. The Chakra of Breathing notable passive skill now grants 20% faster start of energy shield recharge instead of 1% increased energy shield recharge rate per 4 dexterity. The Commanding Rage notable passive skill now grants 2% increased minion attack speed per 5 rage, previously 1% per rage. The Convalescence notable passive skill now grants 20% faster start of energy shield recharge, previously 40%, and 10% reduced energy shield recharge rate, previously 15%. The Core of the Guardian notable passive skill now grants 30% increased block chance and 20% reduced maximum energy shield, previously 100% increased armor, evasion, and energy shield from equipped shield. The Covering Ward notable passive skill now grants gain 25 energy shield when you block, previously 20, and 12% increased block chance. It no longer grants 25% increased energy shield recharge rate. The Craving Slaughter notable passive skill now provides plus 15 maximum rage if you've used a skill that requires glory in the past 20 seconds. Previously plus 8 per skill that requires glory used in the past 6 seconds up to 5 times. The Critical Overload notable passive skill now provides 15% increased critical spell damage bonus, previously 15% increased spell damage if you dealt a critical hit recently. The Cunning Fox notable passive skill has been replaced with the Quick Fox, which grants 20% increased deflection rating while moving. The small all attribute passives prior to the notable now grant 20% increased evasion rating while moving. The Deadly Force notable passive skill now provides 15% increased critical hit chance, previously 10%, and 15% increased damage if you dealt a critical hit in the past 8 seconds, previously 25%. The Dependable Ward notable passive skill now grants 8% to chaos resistance and 12% faster start of energy shield recharge, previously 25%. The Devoted Protector notable passive skill now grants 10% faster start of energy shield recharge, previously 15%. The Echoing Pulse notable passive skill now grants echoed spells have 25% increased area of effect. It no longer grants final repeat of spells has 30% increased area of effect, which did not function. The Effervescent notable passive skill now grants 4% increased cast speed for each different spell you've cast in the last 8 seconds, previously 4. The Energizing Arcan notable passive skill now grants 30% increased Arcan duration instead of 40% increased energy shield recharge rate whilst affected by Arcan buff. The Energizing Deflection notable passive skill now grants 12% faster start of energy shield recharge instead of 30% increased energy shield recharge rate. The Essence Infusion notable passive skill now grants 12% faster start of energy shield recharge and plus 12 to intelligence, previously plus 10. It no longer grants 40% increased energy shield recharge rate. The Fast Metabolism notable passive skill now grants 40% increased damage while leeching life. Previously, life leech effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled. The Fortifying Blood notable passive skill now grants 15% increased amount of life leashed, previously 20%. The Goring notable passive skill no longer grants 40% increased physical damage. It now grants 3% increased maximum life and 20% increased amount of life leached, previously 3% reduced maximum life and 30% increased amount of life leached. The Immortal Infamy notable passive skill now grants 6% increased life recovery rate instead of 10% increased energy shield recharge rate. The Lifelong Friend and Nurturing Guardian notable passive skills have swapped positions. The Mystic Stance notable passive skill now grants 12% faster start of energy shield recharge, previously 30%. The Patient Barrier notable passive skill now grants 50% increased maximum energy shield, previously 60%. The Quick Response notable passive skill now grants 10% faster start of energy shield recharge, previously 20%. And 20% faster start of energy shield recharge when not on full life, previously 30%. The Rapid Recharge notable passive skill now grants 12% faster start of energy shield recharge and 12% increased energy shield recharge rate, both previously 25%. The Refocus notable passive skill now grants 20% increased mana regeneration rate while stationary, instead of 30% increased energy shield recharge rate. The Shatter Palm notable passive skill now provides 20% increased critical damage bonus, previously 10% chance to daze. The Shimmering notable passive skill now grants 10% faster start of energy shield recharge rate and 20% increased evasion if you have been hit recently. It no longer grants 20% increased energy shield recovery rate if you haven't been hit recently. The Staggering Palm notable passive skill now provides 25% increased physical damage, previously 20%, and now provides 10% chance to daze instead of 20% increased critical damage bonus. The Storm Charged notable passive skill now provides damage penetrates 8% of enemy elemental resistances and 5% increased attack and cast speed with elemental skills, It no longer provides 15% increased critical hit chance or 40% increased elemental damage if you've dealt a critical hit recently. The Tempered Mind notable passive skill now provides 15% increased effect of fully broken armor, previously 20% increased critical damage bonus. The Voracious notable passive skill no longer grants 20% of life leech as instant. It now grants 15% increased attack speed while leeching. The Wide Barrier notable passive skill now grants 30% increased block chance and 20% reduced armor, previously 25% reduced defenses. The Wyvern's Breath notable passive skill has been updated and now provides 40% increased elemental ailment application if you have shapeshifted into an animal form recently. This now applies to freeze build-up, but it is otherwise identical. The first two spell damage passive skills at the starting area of the passive tree for Witch and Sorceress now provide 10% increased spell damage, previously 8%. Small passive skills that grant faster start of energy shield recharge now have values of 6%, previously 15%. Small passive skills that granted energy shield recharge rate have been removed from the passive skill tree and replaced by faster start of energy shield recharge at a lower value. Small passive skills granting 10% increased amount of life leech have now values of 8%. The small banner area of effect passive skills now provide 12% increased banner area of effect, previously 15%. The small banner area tactician passive skill now provides 16% increased banner area of effect, previously 20%. The Unsavored Feast Timeless Duel notable no longer grants 20% instant leech if you have at least 200 tribute. It now grants life leech 35% faster if you have at least 100 tribute, previously 25%. Skill changes. Skills with a fixed number of projectiles, such as Glacial Lance, can now benefit from effects that cause projectile count modifiers to apply to something else instead, such as Ricochet 3 support. Skills which have a cost of 0 mana can now display this cost. This allows players to distinguish between skills like default attacks, which do not have a cost at all and are thus unaffected by any plus cost modifiers, from those which do have a base cost, but with 0 base value, which are affected by all plus cost modifiers, even if they add different resource costs, like adding life cost to a skill with base mana cost 0. Crossbow ammunition skills now have a base cost of 0 rather than having their cost completely disabled, meaning that the effects that add additional costs will now apply to them. Ignites inflicted on targets by oil ground that has been ignited can no longer compound and cannot be compounded with by other ignites from the same skill use. All command skills now have 50% movement speed penalty during skill use, previously 70%. Align Fate, granted by the Oracle's Fateful Vision notable passive, now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate also apply to Visage appearance frequency. Ancestral Warrior Totem no longer has a hidden 0.6 second delay between all skill uses. Instead, this delay is now 50% of the skill's attack time and is described accordingly on the skill. Bone Storm no longer has the sustained tag. Bone Shatter. Quality now grants 0 to 20% increased attack speed, previously 0 to 30% increased attack speed. Comet now deals 212 to 318 cold damage at gem level 11, previously 223 to 335, scaling up to 787 to 1181 damage at gem level 20, previously 829 to 1243. Fire-infused Comet now deals 212 to 318 fire and cold damage at gem level 11, previously 279 to 418. Scaling to 787 to 1181 fire and cold damage at gem level 20, previously 1036 to 1554. Cull the Weak now has Can't Be Evaded, now deals 109 to 281% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 60% to 156%. Attack speed is now 75% of base, previously 60%, and it now has a mana cost of 8 to 42 at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 9 to 46. The maximum dash range has been increased by 15%. Defiance Banner, Dread Banner, and War Banner no longer have a movement speed penalty during use, now have a banner or a base radius of 6 meters, previously 4.5. Earthquake, Aftershock now deals 184 to 666% of attack damage at gem levels 1 to 20, previously 160 to 580%. Eternal Rage can no longer be activated in specific weapon sets. It is now required to be active in both weapon sets and will fail to activate if this is not possible. Feral Invocation no longer bypasses the cooldown of socketed skills. Flame Breath now has an energy gain penalty similar to Incinerate. Fortifying Cry now only consumes 1 stack when you detonate a shield wall to create a shockwave around each shield wall segment. Fortifying Cry shockwaves form a single shield wall, cannot hit the same enemy multiple times. Fortifying Cry now only consumes 1 stack when you detonate a shield wall to create a shockwave around each shield wall segment. Fortifying Cry shockwaves from a single shield wall cannot hit the same enemy multiple times. Shield Wave now deals 5 to 7 added physical damage per 15 armor on shield, previously 6 to 8. Fragmentation Rounds, quality now grants plus 0 to 2 fragments per shot, previously 0 to 20% more physical damage. Freezing Salvo now has 34 to 68% more magnitude of chill inflicted and more freeze build-up at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 56 to 107%. Gathering Storm now causes perfectly timed dash to explode any Tempest Bell on hit, creating a massive shockwave that deals 564 to 869% attack damage at gem levels 13 to 20. Shocked ground is left in the wake of the Tempest shockwave, previously on Perfect Dash, with a radius of 3.2 meters, turning precise timing into a devastating area clearing combo. Perfect timing shockwaves can now only hit enemies once per skill use and no longer interact with objects created by non-Tempest Bell skills. Shockwave limit is now 50. Quality now grants 0 to 20% longer perfect timing window, previously plus 0 to 8 maximum shockwaves per use. Ghost Dance. The interval between gaining Ghost Shrouds is no longer a duration. It now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate, also applied to Ghost Shroud gain frequency. It also now has, when hit, lose a Ghost Shroud and regenerate energy shield equal to 2% of your evasion rating per second if you have lost a Ghost Shroud recently. Now gains a Ghost Shroud every 11.7 to 10.1 seconds at gem levels 4 to 20, previously 7.6 to 6.1. Grim Feast. Grim Resurrection now has a 1-second cooldown. Ice Shot. Ice shards no longer have 25% more freeze buildup. Ice Strike. Quality now grants 0 to 20% increased attack speed, previously 0 to 10% more attack speed. Lightning Arrow. Multiple lightning beams are no longer able to chain onto the same target. Lunar Blessing. Triggered moonbeams are no longer considered melee skills. Magma Barrier. Now deals 5 to 7 added fire damage per 15 armor and evasion on shield, previously 6 to 8. Mirage Archer and Mirage Deadeye can now be used with channeled skills including Snipe, Plasma Blast, and Detonating Arrow. Mirror of Refraction, granted by the Adziri's Rule unique staff, now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate also applied to mirror appearance frequency. Oil Barrage. Mana costs have been reduced by 18%. Empowered Oil Barrage now has a mana cost per second equivalent to the initial mana cost of Oil Barrage. Oil Barrage now deals 10% more damage at all levels, while Empowered Oil Barrage now deals 10% less damage at all levels. Empowered Oil Barrage now consumes a power charge every 1.5 seconds to continue channeling, previously every 2 seconds. Parry. Area of effect has been changed to more closely match its animation. No longer has bonuses to attack distance. Poison Burst Arrow. Poison duration is now 3 seconds at all gem levels, previously 3 to 4.9 seconds at gem levels 1 to 20. Quality now grants 0 to 10% more magnitude of poison inflicted, previously 0 to 20%. Pounce now has a cooldown of 6 to 5.1 seconds at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 4.9 to 4 seconds at gem levels 3 to 20. Ravenous Swarm now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate also applied to swarm spawning frequency. Rend. Fixed a bug where lightning charged Rend was scaling twice with levels. The base damage has been increased to compensate. Lightning charged Rend now deals 130 to 405% attack damage at levels 1 to 20, previously 120 to 586%. Resonating Shield now deals 5 to 7 added physical damage per 15 armor on shield, previously 6 to 8. Rolling Magma now chains 3 times at gem level 1, previously 2, scaling up to chain 5 times at gem level 20, previously 4. Rolling Slam now has +1 second to total attack time, previously plus 1.5 seconds. The first slam now deals 75 to 272% of attack damage at gem levels 1 to 20, previously 90 to 367%. And the second slam now deals 150 to 543% of attack damage at gem levels 1 to 20. Previously 180 to 735%. Shattering Spite, granted by Adziri's Contempt unique spear, now has 50% less magnitude of damaging ailments you inflict. No longer has life leech from explosions with at least 15 bloodstone lancers, is instant. Shield Wall now deals 5 to 7 added physical damage per 15 armor on shield, previously 6 to 8. Shred. Quality now grants 0 to 20% increased attack speed, previously 0 to 10% more attack speed. Snipe now deals 121 to 312% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 133 to 343%. And Explosion now deals 484 to 1449% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 454 to 1,358%. Icy Blast now deals 764 to 3,067% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 913 to 3,062%, and now has 33 to 50% more damage with hits for explosions originating from a unique enemy at gem levels 3 to 20, previously always 50%. Icy Blast explosion radius is now 3 meters, previously 3.2. Spell Totem can now be used while moving and has received an updated animation. Supercharged Slam now more clearly states that it has a fixed attack time that cannot be modified. This is purely a description change. Tame Beast. Summoned Beast now deal 40% more damage at gem level 9, scaling up to 84% at gem level 20. Now immediately summons newly tamed beasts if you have enough spirit. Tempest Bell can now be ancestrally boosted as though it were a strike skill, and its maximum number of active bells has been increased to 3, previously 1, greatly improving its combo potential. Its shockwave now deals 45 to 119% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 60 to 132%, and can trigger once every 0.3 seconds instead of 0.25 seconds. Toxic Growth now fires 5 pustules, previously 4, with a limit of 5 pustules, previously 12. Quality now grants fires plus 0 to 1 pustule and limit 0 to 1 pustule, previously plus 0 to 2 and plus 0 to 2. Thrashing Vines. Updated description to clarify how frequently it spawns vines. This is not a functional change. Time of Need. The interval between blessings is no longer a duration. It now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate also apply to blessing frequency. And the interval has been reduced to 9.3 to 8.1 seconds at gem levels 8 to 20, previously 11.3 to 10.1. Volcano now has a base critical hit chance of 8%, previously 5%. Whirling Assault. Quality now grants 0 to 20% increased attack speed, previously 0 to 15% more attack speed. Wing Blast. Shockwave now deals 25% more damage at all levels. Support changes. Unleash, Expand, Salvo, and Freezing Salvo supports all now use the same concept of seals instead of each having their own version. This means standardized rules for seals that will be consistent for all cases, resulting in some behavior changes. Supports granting seals now consistently all have the seal category. Freezing Salvo and Salvo support previously had an extra restriction that the relevant skill could not gain seals while you were performing that skill. This is no longer the case, bringing them into consistency with other seal mechanics. Salvo support previously gave a seal every 2 seconds up to a maximum of 3, and provided 2 projectiles per seal. It now gains a seal every 1 second up to a maximum of 6, providing 1 projectile per seal. Advancing Storm can now support any storm skill under any conditions rather than only spells you use yourself. Arjan's Medal now grants 25% chance to load a bolt into all crossbow skills on dealing a killing blow with supporter skills. Previously 100%. Adziri's Impatience can no longer support persistent skills. Bater's Vengeance. When you freeze a target with supporter skills, for each 2 rage you have, you and allies in your presence gain 1% of damage as cold damage for 15 seconds. Previously, for each 1 rage you have for 20 seconds. Brink 1 can now be cut as a level 1 support gem. Previously level 2. Culmination 2 no longer has a combo count loss for supported skills, occurs 50% slower. It now has supported skills lose combo if you generate no combo for 6 seconds, previously 4 seconds. Supported skills can now gain up to 10 combo, previously 20, and supported skills now deal 4% more damage per combo, previously 2%. Corrupting Cry 1, Corrupting Cry 2 no longer causes the supported skill to inflict corrupted blood, but instead it triggers a skill which inflicts corrupted blood, scaled by the level of the gem it's socketed to. Decaying Hex no longer causes the support curse to inflict decay. Instead, it triggers a skill which inflicts decay, scaled by the level of the gem it is socketed to. Dahlia's Desire now grants 5% to the quality of supported skills, previously 10%. Deirdre's Undoing no longer causes cursed ground created by supported skills to become hazards, now causes cursed grounds created by supported skills to spawn witch toads on an interval which seek out enemies and explode, dealing chaos damage. Infernal Legion 1 now grants minions from supported skills take 10% of their maximum life as fire damage per second, previously 20%, and minions from supported skills ignite enemies within a radius of 1.5 meters as though dealing base fire damage equal to 10% of minions' maximum life, previously 20%. Infernal Legion 2 now grants minions from supported skills take 10% of their maximum life as fire damage per second, previously 20%, and minions from supported skills ignite enemies within a radius of 2 meters as though dealing base fire damage equal to 10% of minions' maximum life, previously 20%. Now additionally grants minions from supported skills have plus 20 to fire resistance. Infernal Legion 3 can no longer be obtained. Living Lightning no longer replaces minions when summoning a new one while already at maximum number of minions. Morgana's Tempest can now support any storm skill under any conditions rather than only spells you use yourself. Overabundance 3 now properly describes that it cannot support persistent skills. Overextend can no longer be obtained. Existing items are unaffected by this change. Pequat's Pact no longer causes the support skill to inflict corrupted blood, but instead it triggers a skill which inflicts corrupted blood, scaled by the level of the gem it is socketed to. No longer has lose 2% of maximum life per corrupted blood inflicted by supported skills. Instead, it now has supported skills cost 10% of maximum life for each time they've been used recently, up to a maximum of 30%. Rage 1, Rage 2, and Rage 3 can now support minion skills. Ratha's Assault now grants supported skills load 4 bolts when you dodge, previously 5, and supported skills load 3 additional bolts, previously 4. It now also grants supported skills have 10% increased attack speed, previously 20%. Refraction 1 now additionally causes supported banner skills to grant allies deflection rating equal to 15% of their evasion rating. Refraction 2 now additionally causes supported banner skills to grant allies deflection rating equal to 20% of their evasion rating. Shock Conduction 2 can no longer be obtained. Static Shocks updated description to clarify that it triggers from shocking hits. Uthred's Augury now grants +2 to level of supported skills if exactly 2 other supports are modifying them, previously +3. Uhtred's Omen now grants +2 to level of supported skills if exactly 1 other support is modifying them, previously +3. Volt now grants supported skills gain 2 voltaic charge per meter travelled, previously 3. Supported skills now also gain 1% of damage as extra lightning damage per voltaic charge consumed, previously 5% per 10 voltaic charge. Unique item changes. The Ab Eterno unique boosts no longer grant 10% less movement speed and skill speed per dodge roll in the past 20 seconds, and now have 200 to 250% increased armor, evasion, and energy shield, previously 100 to 150%. It now has your speed is unaffected by slows while sprinting, and gain over encumbrance for 4 seconds when you dodge roll. As existing versions of this unique can be updated to the new armor, evasion, and energy shield values using a divine orb, but will not receive any other changes. The Pep's Supremacy unique focus no longer has 30 to 50% faster start of energy shield recharge. The Adziri's Acuity unique gloves have been reworked. They now grant 150 to 200% increased armor, plus 100 to 150 to maximum life leech, 10% of physical attack damage as life, and 10% of physical damage dealt by your hits causes blood loss and Val Pact. They also grant the Herald of the Royal Queen skill. Val Cultivation Orb outcomes on Adziri's Acuity have also changed. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Sierran Inheritance unique body armor now grants 15 to 30% increased energy shield recharge rate instead of 30 to 50% faster start of energy shield recharge. The Black Flame unique ring no longer has enemies ignited by you take chaos damage instead of fire damage from ignite. It now has Withered You Inflict also increases fire damage taken. Ignite You Inflict deals chaos damage instead of fire damage. And Withered does not expire on enemies ignited by you. Additionally, it now has 80 to 100% increased ignite magnitude, previously 50%, and 60 to 75% in reduced ignite duration on enemies, previously 50%. Ignite magnitude and duration modifiers can be updated to the new values using a divine orb. Other modifiers will remain unchanged. The Blistering Bond unique ring now has fire damage, also contributes to bleeding magnitude, and bleeding you inflict deals fire damage instead of physical damage, in addition to its other modifiers. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Brass Dome unique body armor now has 500 to 600% increased armor, previously 700 to 800%. Existing versions of this unique can be made worse with a divine orb. The Carnage Heart unique amulet now has 25 to 50% increased damage while leeching. Existing items are unaffected by this change. The Chobba Chabba unique mace now has +2 to 3 to level of all minion skills. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Death's Harp unique bow no longer has bow attacks fire 3 additional arrows. Instead, it now has +250 to 330%, surpassing chance to fire an additional arrow. The Elevor unique helmet now grants charms gain 1 charge per second, previously 0.5, and now provides +1 to 2 charm slots, previously +1. Existing items can be buffed using a divine orb. The Eshtera's Path unique ring no longer has cold resistance, is unaffected by area penalties. It now has +5 to 10% to fire and cold resistance per equipped item with a lightning resistance modifier. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Glowswarm unique ring now has using a mana flask grants guard equal to 100% of the flask's recovery amount for 4 seconds. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Hollow Mask unique helmet now grants the Wildwood's gift skill, where Asmirian spirits offer guidance, allowing you to see nearby ancient blooms. It also now has remnants you create affect allies in your presence, as well as you when collected, and 80 to 100% increased reservation efficiency of remnant skills. The Husk of Dreams unique body armor has been renamed to Reverie. It no longer has 20 to 30% increased flash charges gained, or 50% less flash charges used. It now grants the Rite of Restoration skill and has non-unique life flasks apply their effects constantly. It also now has cannot use life flasks. Recovery from life flasks cannot be instant. Recovery from life flasks cannot be applied to anything other than you, as well as 40 to 60% less life flask recovery. Existing versions of this item cannot obtain these new modifiers. The Hiri's Aya unique body armor now has 100 to 150% increased evasion rating, previously 200 to 250%, and gain 10 to 20% of damage as extra cold damage, previously 15 to 25%. Existing versions of this unique can be made worse with a divine orb. The Levinstone unique ring no longer has +1 to level of all lightning skills. It now has lightning skills chain +1 times. The Megalomaniac unique jewel now drops identified. The Plaguefinder unique gloves now have cannot inflict elemental ailments. The Prized Pain unique ring no longer has deal your thorns damage to enemies you stun with melee attacks. It now has 15 to 25% chance to deal your thorns damage to enemies you hit with melee attacks. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Radiant Grief unique helmet now has enemies in your presence are ignited as though you dealt 200 base fire damage, previously 100. Existing items can be updated to the new value with a divine orb. The Saffron's Resolve unique ring no longer has lightning resistance as affected by area penalties. It now has +5 to 10% to cold and lightning resistance per equipped item with a fire resistance modifier. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Seed of Cataclysm unique ring no longer has 30 to 50% increased critical spell damage bonus. It now has 5% reduced critical spell damage bonus per critical hit you've dealt with spells recently, and 15 to 30% chance for spell damage with critical hits to be lucky. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Sekhma's Revolve unique rings have been renamed to Saffron's Resolve, Zada's Longevity, and Eshtera's Path. The Sign Akuyo unique gloves now have 150 to 200% increased armor, evasion, and energy shield, previously 100 to 150%. It no longer has enemies immobilized by you takes 20% more damage, and instead now has 30 to 50% increased damage against immobilized enemies. The Soul Mantle unique body armor no longer has 20 to 30% reduced totem life. It instead now has +75% to spirit. Existing versions of this item are not affected by this change. The Svalin unique shields cast on block skill now has supported skills cost nothing. It also now has +50 to 100 runic ward. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Zyda's Longevity unique ring no longer has lightning resistance, is unaffected by area penalties. It now has +5 to 10% to fire and lightning resistance per equipped item with a cold resistance modifier. Existing items are not affected by this change. The Xerfes Genesis unique belt no longer has 10 to 30% increased charm charges used. It now has 50% of charges consumed by used life flasks are granted to your charms. Skills from corrupted gems have 15 to 25% increased cost efficiency during any flask effect, and 25 to 50% increased corrupted charms effect duration, in addition to its other modifiers. Item changes. Greater and perfect currencies have been made somewhat rarer, with transmutation and augmentation being made significantly rarer. Greater orbs of transmutation and greater orbs of augmentation now have a minimum modifier level of 44, previously 55, making them more accessible. They can now begin dropping in Act 4. Divine orbs are now more common. The corruption outcome that randomizes the numeric values of the modifiers on an item beyond the normal range now multiplies each modifier based on the current value instead of randomizing the value. Sanctifying an item now multiplies each modifier value based on their current value instead of randomizing values. Omen of Corruption can no longer be obtained. Martial weapons and flasks found in the campaign are now more likely to be of the highest base type available at that level. The overall number of essences found in the campaign has been increased, though the proportion of these being essences of the infinite has been significantly decreased. This will lead to finding more useful essences as you progress. The amount of armor granted by items and modifiers has been increased as you get to higher levels. At level 65, you should have approximately 33% more armor, tapering down to 15% at level 80+. The amount of evasion granted by items and modifiers has been increased as you get to higher levels. At level 65, you should have approximately 33% more evasion, tapering down to 15% at level 80. The amount of energy shield granted by items is now roughly 8% more at level 65 and unchanged at level 80+. The Vile Robe armor base type now has 171 base energy shield, previously 184. The base armor of existing items will automatically be adjusted, while armor modifiers on existing items can be updated with a Divine Orb. Increased the base weapon range of some martial weapon base types. One-hand maces now have a base weapon range of 1.3, previously 1.1. 1.5 for two-hand maces, previously 1.3. And 1.4 for quarterstaffs, previously 1.3. The Obliterator bow and artillery bow base types now have 1.1 attacks per second, previously 1.15. The implicit modifier for Warden and Guardian bows now provide 25 to 35% chance to chain an additional time, previously 20 to 30%. Existing items can be updated with a Divine Orb. The implicit modifier for Rabid, Fury, and Magi talismans now provide +7 to 10 maximum rage, previously +8 to 12. Existing items can be updated with a Divine Orb. The implicit modifier for Volt, Fang, and Thunder talismans now provides 20 to 30% increased magnitude of shock you inflict, previously 15 to 25%. Existing items can be updated with a Divine Orb. Alternate quality items from breach catalysts may now be salvaged to return a portion of the catalyst used. The plus to level of all melee skills modifiers on two-handed attack weapons now has a value of +5 at tier 1, previously +7. The lower tiers have also been adjusted. The plus to level of all projectile skills modifiers on two-handed attack weapons now has a value of +5 at tier 1, previously +7. The lower tiers have also been adjusted. The plus to level of all melee skills modifiers on one-handed attack weapons now has a value of +4 at tier 1, previously +5. The lower tiers have also been adjusted. the plus to level of all projectile skills modifiers on one-handed attack weapons now has a value of +4 at tier 1, previously +5. The lower tiers have also been adjusted. The +2 to level of all projectile skills modifier on quivers now has a value of +1. The plus to level of all gems on attack weapons can now only roll above level 18. Added surpassing chance to fire an additional arrow modifiers for quivers. The perfect essence of battle now provides +3 to level of all attack skills on two-hand melee weapons or crossbows, previously +5, and +2 to level of all attack skills on one-handed melee weapons or bows, previously +3. Essence of Hysteria now grants 20 to 23% increased energy shield recharge rate when applied to foci, previously 41 to 45%. Body runes now grant +30, 45, 60 maximum life when socketed in armor items, previously +20, 30 or 40. +30, 40 or 50 maximum energy shield when socketed in staffs and wands, previously +25, 30 and 35, and grants leech 3, 4 and 5% of physical damage as life when socketed in martial weapons, previously 2, 2.5 and 3%. Mind runes now grant 20, 30 and 40 maximum mana when socketed in armor items, previously 15, 25 and 35. 45, 60 and 75 maximum mana when socketed in staffs and wands, previously 30, 40 and 50. And grants leech 2, 3, 4% of physical damage as mana, previously 1.5, 2 and 2.5%. Rebirth runes now grant gain 15, 25, 35 life per enemy killed when socketed in a martial weapon, previously 10, 20, 30, and now grants regenerate 0.35, 0.4, 0.45% of maximum life per second when socketed in armor items, previously 0.25, 0.3, and 0.35%. Inspiration runes now grant gain 10, 20, and 30 mana per enemy killed when socketed in a martial weapon, previously 8, 16, and 24, and grants 20, 25, 30% increased mana regeneration rate when socketed in staffs and wands, previously 16, 20, and 24%. Stone runes now cause 20, 30, 40% increased stun buildup when socketed in a martial weapon, previously 20, 25, 30%, and grants +50, 75 to 100 to stun threshold when socketed in armor items, previously +40, 60 or 80. Vision runes now grant +60, 90, 120 to accuracy rating when socketed in a martial weapon, previously +50, 80, 110. And 8, 12, 16% increased life and mana flask recovery when socketed in armor items, previously 8, 10 and 12%. Desert runes now grant +10, 14, 18% to fire resistance when socketed in armor items, previously +10, 12, 14%. The bonded modifier on martial weapons, wands and staffs now grants 30% increased in ignite magnitude, previously 25%. Glacial runes now grant 10, 14, 18% to cold resistance when socketed in armor items, previously 10, 12, 14%. Storm runes now grant 10, 14, 18% to lightning resistance when socketed in armor items, previously 10, 12, 14%. Robust runes now grant 6, 9, and 12 to strength when socketed in equipment, previously 6, 8, and 10. Adept runes now grant 6, 9, and 12 to dexterity when socketed in equipment, previously 6, 8, and 10. Finally, resolve runes now grant 6, 9, and 12 to intelligence when socketed in equipment, previously 6, 8, and 10. Standard rune bonded modifiers now grant 20 life and 20 mana when socketed in armor items, previously 10 life and 10 mana. Lesser rebirth runes now grant 4% increased energy shield recharge rate when socketed in a wand or staff, previously 12%. This change applies to existing items. Rebirth runes now grant 6% increased energy shield recharge rate when socketed in a wand or staff, previously 15%. This change applies to existing items. Greater rebirth runes now grant 8% increased energy shield recharge rate when socketed in a wand or staff, previously 18%. Rebirth runes now grant 6% increased energy shield recharge rate when socketed in a wand or staff, previously 15%. This change applies to existing items. Greater rebirth runes now grant 8% increased energy shield recharge rate when socketed in a wand or staff, previously 18%. This change applies to existing items. Kraken's Rune of Recovery now grants 30% increased energy shield recharge rate when socketed in a body armor, previously 50%. Existing items are affected by this change. Lady Hestra's Rune of Winter no longer adds 19 to 28 cold damage. It instead adds 19 to 28 cold damage against chilled or frozen enemies. Thane Leld's Rune of Spring no longer adds 1 to 60 lightning damage. It instead adds 1 to 60 lightning damage against shocked enemies. Thane Merc's Rune of Summer no longer adds 23 to 34 fire damage, but instead adds 23 to 34 fire damage against ignited enemies. All idols can now be socketed into scepters. Idol of Egrin now grants 20% increased curse duration when socketed into a scepter. Idol of Eshta now grants 15% increased cost efficiency when socketed into a helmet, previously 12%, and now grants 30% increased mana recovery rate whilst your companion is in your presence when socketed into a scepter. Idol of Grold now is socketed into boots. It now grants 50% increased total power countered by war cries, previously 20%. Now grants 15% increased damage for each different companion in your presence when socketed into a scepter. The bonded modifier now grants 30% increased glory generation, previously 20%. Idol of Maxarius now grants 0.2 flask charges per second when socketed into a scepter. Idol of Ralakesh now grants 40% increased armor, evasion, and energy shield whilst your companion is in your presence when socketed into a scepter. Idol of Sirius now grants allies in your presence have 8% increased movement speed when socketed into a scepter. The bonded modifier now grants 20% reduced slow potency, previously 15%. Idol of Thraldana now grants allies in your presence deal 13 to 27 added attacked chaos damage when socketed into a scepter. Bear Idol now grants 10% increased area of effect when socketed in helmets, previously 8%. The bonded modifier now grants 12% increased reservation efficiency of companion skills when socketed in helmets, previously 10%. Boar Idol now grants allies in your presence regenerate 0.5 of your maximum life per second when socketed in scepters. Previously, allies in your presence regenerate 8 life per second. The bonded modifier now grants 25% increased Warcry cooldown recovery rate when socketed in gloves, previously 15%. The Cat Idol now grants 25% increased accuracy rating when socketed in gloves, previously 15%. The bonded modifier now grants 30% increased charm charges gained when socketed in gloves, previously 20%. Fox Idol now has a limit of 1. It now grants other socketed idols in this item also grant their bonded modifiers when socketed in body armors. Previously plus 2% to quality of all skills. The bonded modifier now grants plus 5% to quality of all skills when socketed in body armors, previously plus 4 to all attributes. Owl Idol now grants plus 12% increased cooldown recovery rate when socketed in foci, previously 10%, and allies in your presence have a 10% increased cast speed when socketed in scepters, previously 8%. The bonded modifier now grants 20% increased effect of arcane buffs on you when socketed in foci, previously 15%. Ox Idol now grants 15% increased block chance when socketed in shields and bucklers, previously 10%. And allies in your presence have plus 12% to all elemental resistances when socketed in scepters, previously 8%. The bonded modifier now grants 15% chance for damage of enemies hitting you to be unlucky when socketed in shields and bucklers, previously 10%. Primed Idol now grants minions have 15 increased maximum life when socketed in a helmet, previously 12%, and allies in your presence deal 40% increased damage when socketed in scepter, previously 30%. The bonded modifier now grants remnants can be collected from 15% further away when socketed in helmets, previously 20%. Rabbit Idol now has a limit of 1. It now grants 12% increased rarity of items found when socketed in body armors, previously 5%, and 15% increased spirit when socketed in scepters, previously 10%. The bonded modifier now grants 10% increased quantity of gold dropped by slain enemies when socketed in body armors, previously 5%. Snake Idol now grants 8% increased curse magnitude when socketed into gloves, previously 5%, and allies in your presence have 10% increased attack speed when socketed in a scepter, previously 8%. The bonded modifier now grants remnants have 15% increased effect when socketed in gloves, previously 10%. Stag Idol now has a limit of 1. It now grants projectiles have 15% chance to fork when socketed in helmets, previously 50% increased Thorn's critical hit chance. The bonded modifier for helmets now grants 30% chance for an additional projectile when forking, previously Thorn's damage has 40% chance to ignore enemy armor. Wolf Idol now grants 15% increased magnitude of bleeding you inflict when socketed in gloves, previously 10%, and allies in your presence have a 20% increased critical damage bonus when socketed in scepters, previously 14%. The bonded modifier now grants 25% reduced magnitude of bleeding on you when socketed in gloves, previously 15%. At Mahua's Soul Core of Retreat no longer grants 30% faster start of energy shield recharge when socketed in a body armor or focus. Instead, it now grants gain additional ailment threshold equal to 15% of maximum energy shield and gain stun threshold equal to 15% of maximum energy shield. This change applies to existing items. Maximum rage on ruby jewels can now roll between 1 to 2 maximum rage, previously +1. Existing items can possibly be updated to the new values with a divine orb. Increased chaos damage on sapphire jewels can now roll between 7 and 13%, previously 6 and 12. Existing items can possibly be updated to the new values with a divine orb. Suffix modifiers granting fastest start of energy shield recharge can no longer roll on foci, intelligence body armors, or jewels. Increased energy shield recharge rate suffix modifiers can now roll on intelligence body armors. The implicit modifier on the arcane raiment and sacramental robe body armors is now 15 to 25% increased energy shield recharge rate instead of 40 to 50% faster start of energy shield recharge. This change does not affect existing items. The feathered prefix modifier can no longer roll on time-lost sapphire and sapphire jewels. The fevered prefix modifier can no longer roll on time-lost sapphire and sapphire jewels. The of diffusion, of dispersal, and of enlivening suffix modifiers can no longer roll on body armors and foci. The of buffering suffix modifier now grants 12 to 15% increased energy shield recharge rate, previously 36 to 40%. You can divine existing items to make them worse. The of adore suffix modifier now grants 16 to 19% increased energy shield recharge rate, previously 41 to 45%. You can divine existing items to make them worse. The of sufficient suffix modifier now grants 20 to 23% increased energy shield recharge rate, previously 46 to 50%. You can divine existing items to make them worse. Cast speed modifiers on rings and amulets are no longer shared with foci and wands. For rings and amulets, these modifiers now roll at slightly higher levels. The highest tier cast speed modifier for rings now rolls at level 60 and at level 66 for amulets. The maximum values on these modifiers are unchanged. Increased banner area of effect modifiers on jewels now have values of 6 to 16%, previously 10 to 20%. Existing items can be updated to the new values with a divine orb. Desecrated modifiers granting instant leech can no longer roll. Existing items will not be affected by this change. The Squire's hybrid physical damage and accuracy modifier on weapons now has a minimum level of 8, previously 1. Existing items will have their level requirement changed. The Journeyman's hybrid physical damage and accuracy modifier on weapons now has a minimum level of 14, previously 11. Existing items will have their level requirement changed. The precise accuracy modifier on weapons now has a minimum level of 8, previously 1. Existing items will have their level requirement changed. The reliable accuracy modifier on weapons now has a maximum level of 13, previously 11. Existing items will have their level requirement changed. The gladiatorial helm base type has been renamed to Cassis Helm. Oswald no longer undercuts you for your priceless idols found in Act 3, now offering you 3,000, 4,000, and 6,000 gold for each, previously 500, 1,000, and 1,500. The gold price of weapons for a synchronous trade have been increased by approximately 50%. The desecrated map modifier of Union is no longer functional. This was a legacy modifier that only existed in the early access leagues. Monster changes. The Culling Strike threshold for normal enemies is now 35% of their maximum life, previously 30%. Monster leech resistance now starts at a later level and values are lower at every level. All monsters' rarities now have the same amount of leech resistance. Essence monster packs are now affected by modifiers to pack size, as mirror spirits that are released from monsters now retain their power and empower other spirits released from the monster. The beam from the Priest of the Sun will no longer ignore some walls. You will now refill some flask charges when Viper Napoatzi's soldiers constrict the size of her arena. The Burning Dead in Ogham Village now deal a portion of their damage as fire, previously physical. Improved the visuals and telegraphing of the Lightning Doriani's elite monster. Quest changes. You can no longer enter Plunderer's Point until you have turned in all 4 map pieces in King's March. You now receive a greater mind rune in the Halls of the Dead when interacting with Navali, previously a lesser mind rune. You no longer need to visit the Halani Gates in order to access Traitor's Passage if you've already freed Risu. User interface changes. Added accessibility settings to increase the size of pop-ups. These can be found in the UI section of the options panel. Added a dedicated keybind to perform a dodge roll which cannot cause the player to sprint when held down. This keybind is unbound by default and must be manually assigned in input options if you wish to use it. Added a show only available option to the hideout decorations list when using mouse and keyboard. For players using clicking to move while channeling a skill that can be used while moving will no longer interrupt channeling. This should significantly improve the usability of skills such as Flame Breath and Incinerate on click to move. Improved visual clarity, load times, and performance on the Acts 1 to 3 world maps. Additionally, they have been made to more accurately reflect the in-game directionality of area layouts. Skill information pop-outs no longer move modified stats to the top of the panel. They are still shown in blue. The notification that shows when an item in your Merchant tab shop has sold now displays a different message when the sold item is in a different league. The reroll button in the Ritual UI now pulses when you have free rerolls available. Empowered minions from various modifiers or sources now update the text for minion displayed on the monster. The Augment Stash tab has been updated and now has 5 sections. Marking an enemy now shows the mark on their life bar. Maximum rage loss delay and rage loss per second are now displayed in the character panel. Increase the maximum number of limit of search text boxes to 250 characters. Copying an item's text now always copies the advanced description format. Searching by an item's text will now match the advanced description format. You can now set favorite trades on the currency exchange when using mouse and keyboard. You can now pin a tracking scroll to your social profile to display to your friends, guilds, and party members. You can now preview microtransaction weapon skins in the cosmetics shop without needing the applicable weapon type equipped. Added a top-down camera view for editing your hideout when you're using a controller. Added a feature to quickly change the currency you are currently applying when playing on a controller. Reworked the currency exchange UI when playing with a controller. Improved the target selection for items and interactable objects when using a controller. Updated and restructured the options menu. Enabled in-game clock option for PlayStation and Xbox. Microtransaction changes. Enabled the following existing armor set microtransactions for the use in Path of Exile 2. Arcane, Arctic Crystal, Assassin Atlantis, Black and White, Chimera, Colosseum, Cursed, Dark Prism, Doomguard, Eclipse, Eerie, Fire, Fire and Ice, Imperial Eagle, Mageguard, Malachi, Miracle, Scavenger, Seeker, Twilight, Void Emperor, Vulcan, and Wild. Enabled the following existing back attachment microtransactions for use in Path of Exile 2. Apollyon Cloak, Apollyon Wings, Arcane Cloak, Assassin Cloak, Azurite back attachment, Bellifier back attachment, Corsair back attachment, Corsair Cloak, Crucible back attachment, Darkwood Cloak, Dreadspire Cloak, Empyrean back attachment, Glimmer Sprite Wings, Gorgon back attachment, Illusionist back attachment, Innocence Cloak, Innocence Wings, Lightbringer Cloak, Lightbringer Wings, Midnight Pact Cloak, Midnight Pact Wings, Misery Swords back attachment, Misery Wings, Myrmidon Cloak, Necrotic Cloak, Necrotic Wings, Nightfall Cloak, Nightfall Wings, Orion back attachment, Overseer Cloak, Overseer Wings, Pit Fighter back attachment, Rapture back attachment, Scavenger back attachment, Seraph Banner back attachment, Sin Cloak, Sin Wings, Scepter Cloak, Scepter Wings, Scepter back attachment, Scavenger tail attachment, Starfall Cloak, Starfall Wings, Suffering back attachment, Suffering Cloak, Sun Prism Cloak, Sun Prism Wings, Sunrise Cloak, Sunrise Wings, Twilight Cloak, Val Orb Cloak, Vampiric Wings, Vanguard Banner back attachment, then Verdant Cloak. Enabled the following existing helmet microtransactions for use in Path of Exile 2. Assassin's Hood, Black and White Hood, Cursed Hat, Eerie Hood, Mage Guard Hood, Scavenger Hood, and Wild Cougar Helmet. Enabled all of the remaining portrait frame microtransactions for use in Path of Exile 2. Enabled the existing Originators and Awakeners character effect microtransactions for use in Path of Exile 2. Enabled the Something Fishy, Trapped Wisps, and Not the Bees chest extra effect microtransactions for use in Path of Exile 2. Enabled the existing Anchor Drop Rare Finisher effect microtransaction for use in Path of Exile 2. Enabled the existing Torture Mace microtransaction for use in Path of Exile 2. Enabled the existing Mirage Gauntlet microtransaction for use in Path of Exile 2. Enabled the Twilight Helmet Attachment microtransaction, the Colosseum Helmet Attachment, Swan Crest Helmet Attachment, and Aquila Crest Helmet Attachment microtransactions for use in Path of Exile 2. The Bronze and Silver Marionette character skins now have a second tier that allows you to hide the base character armor. The Exile's Pilfering Ring and Tracking Scroll on crafting now additionally track Hinakora's locks and Fracturing Orb items, useful for high-value crafting outcomes. The Tracking Scroll of Headhunting has been updated to also track some new bosses. As you can probably appreciate, these are extremely long notes, and for that reason, I won't be reading the bug fixes. If you enjoyed me reading through the patch notes and you feel that this would bring value to you in future, do let me know in the comments, and if you really want me to read through bug fixes in future, I am happy to do so. Let me know which changes you are most excited for in the comments. Thank you for listening. I hope this has provided some value, and I look forward to seeing you next time.